Can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah, carry on, Chair. Yep.
Right, okay to start the meeting?
Yeah, carry on, please.
Okay. Right, I'm Councillor McLaren and I'm convener of this group. Please remember that this meeting is live broadcast and please do not make any statements that may identify any individuals. Please put your microphone on silent when not speaking. Please sign in using the chat bar. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's meeting of the Northern Quarter of the Community Board. Can we have the list of apologies? We have Councillor Dillon and Councillor McPake. Is there any others to add?
Yes, Chair, yes, I have got a couple. There's Brian Kane from Scottish Fire and Rescue, Evelyn Ryan, although Raymond Taylor's going to attend tonight in her place, and Teresa Aitken.
Okay, that's fine. Is there anything arising out the minutes of the previous meeting? No? We'll move on now to the Community Board arrangements. Expressed of interest received by John Wilson to take over as chair from tonight. As we all know, it's a rolling chair, and hopefully we got other volunteers coming forward. John, would you like to take over the meeting now? Thank you.
John, I thought there was going to be an opening statement from Northern Corridor Community Forum, because while I was nominated by the Northern Corridor Community Forum to chair this meeting, so I understood that the chair of the Northern Corridor Community Forum wanted to make a statement, but if they're not here, then we'll continue with the meeting.
Is there anybody there for the board want to make a statement? Okay, would you carry on?
We're quite happy for, like we said, we nominated John as chair, but what we would also like to do, the possibility of, is having a vice chair.
Well, it's Carl, it's going to be a revolving chair, so I don't think personally there's a need for a vice chair, because this chair is supposed to move every quarter. Every meeting is supposed to be a different chair.
Well, that's not the case in other boards.
If other groups are doing it differently, well, that's okay. I'll go with your flow. If you want a vice chair, you can't turn up in the nomination. Aye, that's fine.
So what we would look to do is have John as the constant constant chair of the group for a period of a year, and then have Brandon McWilliams as a vice chair for a period of a year.
Matt, have you any issues with that? This is supposed to be a revolving chair. Would you accept John taking it for a year, or have we any objections to that?
It's really up to the community board chair to decide that. I mean, we are trying to make it as open and as inclusive as possible to as many people involved in the process as we can, and that's what we want to do with that, and make it a rotating chair. It doesn't have to be one cycle; it could be 2 or 3 cycles for a chair. There's no time limit on that. We're just trying to make it as wide and as open as possible, if that's what the groups wanted to do.
Is there any other group got somebody that's wanting to show an interest at taking a shot at being chair? No? Okay, Carol, we'll go with that. Can we move on with John now to John and Brandon? Can we move on with that and John taking over tonight for 1 year?
Thank you very much for that. Can I welcome everybody along tonight? As you're aware, this is the third community board meeting held for the Northern Corridor. It is an evolving process, as we all know, and it's particularly the community are aware that it seems to evolve from meeting to meeting. So we'll start off, and I've run through the agenda that's been issued for tonight's meeting, and we'll take the items as they appear in front of your agendas. Item 5, Head of Service, Community Champion Andrew McPherson will provide an update. Is Andrew here?
The chair, yep, I'll just provide just a very brief update if that's okay. Just in terms of the appointment community champions, all 9 community boards now have an assigned community champion. They will remain in place for a period of 3 years with a review after 30 months. The reason for that length of time is obviously we realise this is we're not here for the short term. This is a long-term project about how we improve the overall communications with the council, and deliver on the overall intentions of the community board, which is to obviously improve the outcomes for local communities. So and it also allows us to build up a strong knowledge, because I totally accept that I do not have the local knowledge of most people on this board. So it's good for me that I can have some time to gain that knowledge, and also hopefully build an element of trust amongst all the other members of the board as well. There was a consultation exercise in the overall aims and objectives for the community champions that was circulated on the 27th of July, and we asked for feedback by the 16th of August. We got 12 responses and came back for the most part. They were positive. There was a couple of individual meetings which will now be hosted by myself, because there was a couple of responses from the Northern Corridor which I think would warrant some further discussion. So those will take place over the next couple of weeks. We don't envisage any significant changes in aims and objectives at the moment. However, I fully recognise that this role is very much in its infancy, and it will have to flex, it will have to adapt over the coming months and indeed years to make sure that we deliver on the intentions of the community champion. So that's really it from me, Chair. Thanks very much for that, and happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions to Andrew?
Chair, can I ask a question, please? Having watched one of the other community board meetings on the YouTube channel, I discovered that some of the champions were aligned to different community boards depending on their links with the area or a connection with their remit in their job with particular things. Can I ask how you came to be the chair of the Northern Corridor, the champion for the Northern Corridor? What is your connection or link with us?
Okay, that's a very good point, actually. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. Cumbernauld and the Northern Corridor were my two first choices, if you like. I was equally able to do both. The reason for that is historically I've came from Cumbernauld and Kilsyth District Council. So this is the area that I've got most knowledge of, which is the northern part of the North Lanarkshire. So I've got this sort of a remit for waste building standards, environmental health trading standards, and other services across the whole area. So I could have went into most areas, but this is the one that I have the most sort of understanding and knowledge of from just the years of experience of working in the area.
Are there any other questions? Can I say, Andrew, the report that you sent out to the members, the aims and objectives, can I just make the point, the first two paragraphs, you refer to the process of establishing the role of community champion and the community boards. The reality is that communities were not engaged in the process. The council went ahead and established these boards without any consultation with communities. And I just like it noted that if you are going to be a community champion and will present the case for communities to be engaged in the process, then they have to be engaged right from the outset, not after decisions have been made by the council. Therefore, I would make the plea, if you're going to be the community champion for 3 years, then you make sure the communities are fully engaged, fully informed, and fully involved in the process before decisions are made by the council, because it's very much, as it appears at the present moment, top down. And as I said, there was no engagement whatsoever with communities when these boards were established.
That's a fair point, Chair, and obviously that's one of the things I have to take back. But what I have to say is that I am just a stakeholder in this group, like everyone else on this group. I'm here, as part of the group first and foremost, and obviously I'll be able to communicate anything that comes from here to the council. That's my purpose in this role as well. But I'm just as much invested in making sure this works as anybody else here.
Isabel Kelly, you've got your hand up.
Hi. First of all, can I thank Andrew, because he's made arrangements to meet with members of the community forum we put forward a paper, and quite frankly, we're quite disappointed and the manner in which the community champion has been put forward. We've raised objections to the particular objectives, the fact that community champion has really been hijacked as a title, when really community champion is awarded to people who volunteer and do exceptional work and volunteer their time for nothing. It's an accepted concept of what a community champion is. And no disrespect to Andrew, it's become part of his remit within his job, but it does not reflect the perception of community bodies and organisations, or indeed public service, of what a community champion is. And we're extremely disappointed, and we would like to see that noted in the minutes going back to the Community Empowerment Act Committee. We've published, I think it's a 9-page really objection. I don't think there is any positive comments that we've put there, and that's no reflection in you, Andrew, but a community champion is a person who has live links within the community, and it's really a hijack of that title that's been put on. If we mean a liaison person between corporate management and the community boards, then we say that that's what it is, and don't try and turn it into something that it isn't. You know, so we're disappointed. It might be we're proved wrong as that role evolves, but we have strongly objected to the way, again, and I think it'll be a theme throughout the night, that North Lanarkshire Council put forward things, make decisions, and it is supposed to be about consulting the community, when very often decisions are made and the community is not consulted. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Andrew, do you want to respond to the comment?
Yeah, it's certainly not intention to hijack any name or anything like that at all. This was a decision. It's an internal appointment within the council. It's an internal position, so it's not a reflection of the, you know, of anything else. If anybody wants to, you know, to pronounce themselves community champion for this within certain areas, and that's entirely up to them. This is a decision internal within the council as to the naming of the post. So that's not something that, you know, would necessarily consult on. But you're right, Isabel. There is a significant number of points raised in the paper, which you've highlighted, and I think it's important that we go through them. And it's important that we establish how we're at this position so early on in the process, whereas most community boards are quite receptive to the idea. So it's important that I get to the bottom of that, because as community champion, I need to understand that as well, because that's the only way we're going to move forward.
Okay, are there any other questions? If there's no other questions, I'm intending to move on. Next, item 6 on the agenda, act now. Maddie,
John, sorry, John, sorry, I've had questions in for a while and I've not had
sorry.
Thanks very much, Chair. Through yourself, Chair, I'm going to ask Andrew a question in relation to the community board structures. As you're aware, Andrew, this community board for the Northern Corridor not too long ago had the decision forced upon it where it would potentially be split, and that would take Gap Cosh out of the community board structure. As yet, I'm still waiting on a response on how that rationale was presented, and I'm hopeful that you being here tonight could perhaps provide me with that at your earliest convenience.
Andrew, you're mute.
More than happy if that's the outstanding action. I'm happy to take that away. So even if you want to drop me a quick email on that, and I'll certainly take that up. That's not a problem.
Perfect, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'm now going to move on to item 6. Act now. Maddie Halliday, Chief Executive for Van El.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Climate change.
Nice to be here. Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, thank you. I've got colleagues who've got my presentation to upload because I can't upload it from my end. Thank you, Christine. And could you do it? Thank you. That's great. So Just by way of introduction, although I am the CEO of Banal, I'm actually here today speaking on behalf of the North Lanarkshire Partnership Strategic Leadership Board. Banal is a partner organisation of NLP on behalf of the community and voluntary sector. And one of the priority themes for NLP is the climate emergency, understandably, because as the name suggests, it's a very serious matter. And although all of the statutory organisations in North Lanarkshire have legal duties to reduce carbon to net zero by 2045, and the council has committed to reduce its carbon emissions to net zero by 2030, we need across North Lanarkshire to have action across in all other sectors as well to complement the public sector activity, and particularly community-based, community-led action that is decided and driven by communities. So today I wanted to introduce a very brief outline of why the climate emergency is so important, and introduce that now, but focus particularly on opportunities to support communities to form local action groups and support things that they want to do in their communities. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing the climate emergency, although it's very important. Many of you probably know a fair amount about it, but my slides with the notes will be circulated with the minutes, and so more information will be available there. And I'll focus more on section 2 of my presentation. Also, on the 29th of September, we're holding a community launch event for Act Now, where we're inviting people from all of the 9 localities, and there will be a workshop for each locality where local people, residents and community and voluntary groups can come together and in a supported way discuss how they want to take action, whether they want to and how they want to take action. So this is really a sort of brief introduction to the community board. And if you haven't already received that invitation, I believe Christine Boyle will be sending it out to all community board members. Could I have the next slide, please? And the next one, thanks. So I'm just going to very briefly highlight why we are in a climate emergency, but without going into too much detail due to time pressures. So probably most of you have heard of a number of different terms. There's reference to global warming, and there's also been reference to climate change and climate emergency, and all of these terms are linked. But the reason more recently that the word climate emergency has been used is because the pace of global warming has increased, and also the temperatures of that warming, as in 2020, as this diagram shows, was at 1.2 warming, which is really very serious, with major consequences for our planet and for all of us. And many of those consequences you will be able to see on the news, and they're happening also in Scotland. In 2015, world governments agreed that we should aim for and must aim for no more than 1.5% total increase in temperature. And this increase is caused predominantly by carbon emissions from human activities, our transport, our heating, our manufacturing. And the 1.5 doesn't mean there won't be climate change consequences, but it's agreed that that would be a level at which the most severe consequences would be minimized. If it goes above 1.5%, scientists agree that these would be very serious indeed. This climate action tracker shows that, and in the notes that you'll get with this presentation, you can read a little bit more. The concerning thing is that already, if we look at current policies and pledges across the world, we're actually heading for way above 1.5%. If we go above 3.8%, then that's not survivable for humanity or most life on Earth. So that's why it's a climate emergency and why we need to act now. Could I have the next slide, please? This is a fairly simple diagram when you get into it, which shows how the global warming happens. So as you know, the sun brings our heat and light to the earth, and a lot of it escapes back into the atmosphere, and also other heat that we produce through our activities. But when you emit a lot of carbon, or when we destroy nature, for example, we take coal out of the ground or other fossil fuels, this emits carbon into the atmosphere, which creates a blanket around the earth that actually prevents a lot of that heat escaping, which is what's causing global warming. Could I have the next slide, please? And I think you've all seen in the news just recently and also in previous years about the consequences: flood, fire, also polar ice caps are melting. So I'm not going to speak too much further about that, but just to say that actually these consequences are also happening in Scotland. With increasing summer temperatures, we're basically going to get wetter and warmer. So we're going to have more flooding and we're going to have hotter summers. Could I have the next slide, please? Now, I mentioned earlier that the public sector, rightly so, governments across the world, governments in Scotland and local government, the NHS, are committed to reducing carbon emissions to net zero by 2045 or sooner. These are essential actions, and also the business sector needs to play its part. What I wanted just to illustrate is that, of course, a lot of change can happen from the bottom up. We vote for people, so voting for people is an expression of voice and what we want to see, but also we can take direct action. So we have a lot of young people are mobilising to express the fact that they want governments to act more quickly and invest more in action to tackle climate change. But also there's a whole range of initiatives, some of which we have in North Lanarkshire and some of which we might want to expand in North Lanarkshire. Community renewable energy schemes, we have community gardens and hospitals and so on. These initiatives are happening across the world, across Scotland, and some of them are happening in North Lanarkshire, and we can do more. Could I move to the next slide, please? So, having given you that quick background on one of the most challenging topics facing all of us, I just want to now talk about Act Now very briefly, but focusing on community-led action. Could I have the next slide? So just to say that last November, we did consult with community boards very early on around a draft plan, a draft Act Now plan. And I was a little disappointed because we didn't get many comments. This is now coming back to you with the outline plan. It's published on the website, the Act Now website. On this slide, I summarise the aims, objectives and principles. And this isn't about just tackling climate change in isolation from other issues. So we talk about tackling the climate emergency that is both environmentally sustainable, but also supports social inclusion and economic inclusion, for example, through creation of green jobs. So we're talking about, if you like, a green recovery that improves people's well-being and the quality of life. So it's very important to link all of those things together, and it's entirely possible to do so. And along the bottom here, you'll see the partner agencies for NLP. I'm not going to read the objectives and the principles. You'll be able to read those at your leisure, both through the slides and on our website. So I think that you'll see the objectives there relate to increasing understanding, but also supporting people to transition to what's called low carbon living, where we actually can live good lives, but where we produce less carbon to help contribute to the climate emergency. Could I have the next slide, please? I've already mentioned, if we're looking, you might think, well, this is a huge challenge and what can I do? I've already mentioned that the public sector is doing a lot. It has a legal duty to reduce its carbon emissions to net zero. And the council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and agreed its goal was to reach net zero by 2030, which is very challenging, but is also achievable. Their aspiration is that's for the whole of North Lanarkshire as our contribution to the Scotland target and obviously a global target. Also, the business sector is an important sector for tackling this issue. And the North Lanarkshire Council is convening a meeting in September with business organisations in North Lanarkshire to talk to them about how they can be supported to do more to reduce their carbon emissions. And at that meeting, Act Now will also be launched to the business sector. And what we want to talk about a bit more, what I'd like to talk a bit more, is about residents and the community and voluntary sector at this meeting today and moving onwards as we work together. Just by way of conclusion, also now has a coordinating group, and that coordinating group has reps from the partner agencies, youth ambassadors, because we actually have youth climate ambassadors in North Lanarkshire, which I think demonstrates their passion and commitment to this issue. And we also have reps from the biodiversity and climate emergency network for the community and voluntary sector. Could I have the next slide, please? So this is really going to the heart of my presentation, where really what we want to try and work with you, community boards and residents and community and voluntary sector groups in your locality, is to build community capacity to contribute to the changes that we need to see. So in fact, I heard the word champion is being discussed, but we are really keen, for example, to help people identify as local Act Now champions. And yes, those would be community-based residents who take that on in their voluntary community role. There's a possibility that we could form Act Now local groups that would be led by residents in the community and voluntary sector. But also we can build on good work that we already have. Most primary schools in North Lanarkshire identify as an eco school. Some are actually formally accredited through Keep Scotland Beautiful. And so we've already got a lot of children and young people in our localities who are very aware of these issues, and I'm sure could become involved working with their families and adults in their community. And one of the key things that we want to do is increase further awareness around the climate emergency. But in a way, it's quite frightening, the trajectory of what's happening. But actually, a lot can be done and we can achieve net zero if we work together. So it's raising awareness, but also supporting people to move on to seeing what they can do, which always helps people deal with challenges that are ahead. I mentioned earlier the Community and Voluntary Sector Biodiversity and Climate Emergency Network, which VANAL convenes, and that network and VANAL are also supporting community and voluntary organisations to work towards net zero in their own activities as well. So if we just go to the next slide, thank you, which is more or less the last slide, you'll be glad to hear. So obviously it's really important that there's community voice around this issue. So you raise awareness locally, but also quite legitimately you advocate for action that you want to see by others. For example, should the council not be making progress towards its commitments on net zero, you would obviously be able to raise that issue. Although I'm pretty confident the council is making good progress. But also there's opportunities, for example, for locally led renewable energy schemes where actually that could provide income to community groups. We already have a number of local energy schemes in North Lanarkshire, but they're either council run, there's a few that are based on farms and one in a company. So there's actually opportunities here for communities to do that. There's a lot of communities, I know there's a huge amount of interest in Northern Corridor around green spaces and woodland and so on. There's an opportunity here for community groups to do more. I know some communities across North Lanarkshire are supporting green and active travel. I'm sorry, I don't know, and I should know if if you've had momentum on this issue. I know more about the Shotts area where, for example, recently they've got funding for electric vehicles, and if you have as well, please tell me, that would be good to know. There's opportunities as well to set up community sharing and what might be called upcycling schemes. I know, for example, recently a social enterprise was formed in Cumbernauld as a tool library, but unfortunately wasn't successful. But we do need to look at what's possible and persevere with it, because it's really important that we waste less and we try and repair and reuse more. And if we look at food, which is really important, we know that in North Lanarkshire, people on low incomes often can be very challenged around getting enough food to eat. And we've had growth in food banks. We obviously want to continue to support people to have food security, but we need to start helping people think about eating less meat and eating more plants. The reason being is that production of meat produces a huge amount of carbon, and eating more plants is one way in which we can reduce our carbon footprint. Could I have the last slide, please? So I want to conclude there, happy to take any questions. If you want to have more information, in addition to this presentation, you can go onto the Act Now website. You can read the plan, the Act Now plan. There's a briefing paper. There's also a list of useful resources. We're collecting case studies of good practice already in North Lanarkshire, of which there's quite a lot in across all sectors, including community sector, statutory sector and the business sector. And we've also just launched a monthly e-bulletin with the first edition out now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maddie. Do we have any questions to Maddie?
Yes, John, it's Brandon.
Brandon, on you go.
I was just going to say thank you for the presentation. One area where every community is going to be affected is decarbonisation of how we heat our homes.
Yes.
But there's no mention of this in much of the publication and discussion going about. Do people realise that from 2025, no new houses to be built with what we consider now the conventional gas boiler?
Well, you're absolutely right, Brandon. This is a really big issue. And of course, it's very costly. So new homes can't be built. So new build can't have a gas boiler. Existing homes have a longer period in which they will be able to move towards non-fossil fuel heating. I believe that governments are going to have to run significant national schemes to support people to convert to that. Already, though, it is possible for people to, often with no extra cost and sometimes even a saving, to change their energy tariff to renewables. So even though they may still be have traditional heating in their home, that there are renewable tariffs where it's from a wind farm or whatever, and you can actually get that. So we will be providing a lot of the information, as you say, Brandon, is out there, but maybe awareness is low, and I think much more information needs to be provided around that. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Maddie, for that response. Is there any other questions, any other points? I think if there's no other, Isabel, you've got your hand up.
Maddie, just to say, is it possible to get your contact details? There's a couple of things I'd like to discuss, but obviously not at this meeting.
That's fine, Isabel. Very happy. If you there was that email actnow@vanel, you can email that, or just me. I'll just put my email address in the chat. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else? Any questions or any points you'd like to make to Maddie? If there's nobody else, Maddie, could I ask whether or not VanL will be doing a survey or an audit of groups that are actually already providing working towards the climate challenge issues that we're faced with? Because I do know there's a number of organisations, and we've got the Northern Corridor Community Volunteers, which you're well aware of.
Yes, I am. They're actually very, Claire Williams is a very active member of the network that I mentioned earlier. What we've recently done, and we will do more in-depth survey, just recently we're updating our community and voluntary sector database so we understand the types of areas that people are working in. So if they're working on environmental issues, they can indicate that. And then we're going to do a deeper dive with the groups that say they're working on environmental issues to find out more. But one of the things that we also have to do is go to organisations. So for example, if you're a social care organisation, you wouldn't say I'm working on environmental issues. But when I mentioned earlier in my presentation that we want to support all community and voluntary sector organisations to achieve net zero, we're going to be providing guidance to them about how they can do that in relation to their travel, their equipment, how, for example, remote or blended working can help them reduce their carbon emissions. So this is actually going to be relevant to every community and voluntary sector organisation, although, as you rightly say, some are very, very active on environmental issues, conservation, and so on.
Thank you very much, Maddie. If there's no other questions, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is delivering digital locally. And we have Lynn Gow to speak on that issue.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come along tonight to provide a brief update on where we're at with driving digital locally. My name's Lynn Gow. I'm the Communication and Engagement Lead for the Council's Digital NL programme. You may recall that one of my colleagues came along to your March meeting and delivered a presentation on the Digital NL plans. And through the Digital NL programme, the Council aims to provide online anytime services which meets the needs of our residents. So we want to truly understand what those needs are, and as such we've launched the Driving Digital Locally framework. I just wanted to update you tonight on where we're at with that engagement, because it's now part of my remit. You may recall from the March meeting that the ask at the end of the presentation was offering volunteers the opportunity to join a new digital subgroup. Now, the purpose of this group was to maximise the use of digital services for communities across North Lanarkshire and to drive effective collaboration and engagement within these communities to develop the framework. So I'm delighted to say that we did receive quite a few volunteers and there was a good representation from across all board areas. We're going to meet on a monthly basis and the initial meeting took place on the 12th of August. It was chaired by Councillor Duffy in his role as convener for Transformation and Digitisation Committee, and a draft terms of reference was approved at the Digital NL board back in June. However, I took the terms of reference to the digital subgroup to get final approval, and we got some feedback from that digital subgroup and I've made amendments and they'll be resubmitted at next month's meeting for final approval. I've put myself forward as secretary for the digital subgroup for continuity. However, we have agreed as a group that it will be a rolling chair and vice chair for meetings going forward. There was also discussion during the breakout sessions which focused on supporting early action to achieve better understanding of digital inclusion within the 9 community board areas and across all our equalities group, and looking at ongoing action to support local work linked to the LOIPs. Since the meeting, myself and Margaret Greer, who I believe sits on this community board, and Margaret has agreed to chair the next digital subgroup, we did a bit of a mapping exercise to make sure that we had the right representation on the board covering all the groups. We've agreed that we've got 2 reps from each community board area. So from this board area, it's going to be Margaret and Anne Innes, which is great. The role of the member is to act as an ambassador in their own area and bring their ideas and their actions to the group, and as such take them back to their own areas as well. However, when we did that mapping exercise, I realised that there was a gap from youth representation, so we're still looking for a couple of youth representatives to join the group. So I'm hoping that I can get that organised in the next few weeks. Also just wanted to update you that we took part in a digital inclusion seminar, which was hosted by the Digital NL Partnership, which the council is a partner in, and it was chaired by our own Chief Executive Des Murray. It was an excellent presentation, and it was aimed at those in the partnership and other organisations to explore how we can work together more effectively to increase digital inclusion in North Lanarkshire, and also to reaffirm the commitment to the Digital North Lanarkshire Partnership. We split the delegates up into breakout sessions to discuss the key actions that we need to take to accelerate digital inclusion. Now, the final report won't be ready and it won't be published for another couple of weeks yet. However, I just wanted to share with you tonight some of the overarching themes that were identified in these groups. So we had increased knowledge of digital skills needs amongst the communities, and a digital skills action plan was suggested and discussed, and increased investment, especially around infrastructure, and better collaboration amongst partner organisations. Now, these are key areas that the Digital North Lanarkshire Partnership will be taking forward. And I really think that this seminar is something that perhaps we could look at to try and replicate in a community board level. And I think it's worth discussing the merits, and I'll certainly be taking that back to my digital subgroup. I've also been looking at ways that I can better engage with our elected members, as they're a big part of the Driving Digital Locally framework as well. I want to gain their thoughts around digital inclusion, especially what does it mean to their own within their own constituencies. So I discussed it with my convener, and we've developed a survey. And once the findings from that survey are collated, I'll be setting up some focus groups with elected members and working out how can that be fed into the Driving Digital Locally framework. And just finally, you'll be pleased to know that I just wanted to update you on a new project within the community that I'm working on with my colleagues in Housing Solutions and also the Council Service Integrator provider Agilisis. It's a project targeting elderly residents within retirement complexes across North Lanarkshire. Is to help them get online and to adopt technologies to help with their loneliness and improve their overall happiness and well-being. This is going to be funded through Connecting Scotland, and I'm delighted to say that this week we've been very successful in gaining 200 devices and MiFi boxes to distribute amongst these residents that have indicated that they'd like to be involved in the project. And what we also have to do is link this in with community champions to help support them get online, and we'll be doing this through our own council staff. Also working with our colleagues in education to try and develop an intergenerational project. As I said, I feel as if the youth is very important to the Driving Digital Locally framework, and this is why I think that we should be targeting them to get involved in this project. And I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you very much for listening. Chair, I think you're on mute.
Carol Henderson, was your hand up? Carol, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Carol.
Hi, I just wanted to ask the two champions that you've, the two representatives you've got from the Northern Corridor area. One is Margaret from Auchinloch Community Council.
Yes.
And the other one is Anne Innes from Case.
Yes.
Where does Case fit into? I know that they're a very good organisation in Cumbernauld, but how does Case fit into the Northern Corridor?
I think Anne is there in her capacity as the Northern Corridor representative. Is that the North locality? Am I right, Anne? I can see you on the call. No.
It's just that, as far as I'm aware, Case don't do anything in the Northern Corridor. They're Cumbernauld based, and that's where I'm a bit confused as to how they're going to link with people from the Northern Corridor.
It's Susan Drummond here from the North Locality Consortium.
Yes, so, that's what I'm.
Yep. Case is actually the host organisation of the consortium, and Case as well. We both look after the whole Northern Corridor. It's Cumbernauld and North Locality, so we do cover Forsyth, Midgeysburn, the whole area.
In terms of representation of it, are purely volunteered. So if anybody else is looking to volunteer, I don't think they would be excluded.
Absolutely
we can have that discussion.
I'm just wondering how Case would link with people from the Northern Corridor when they don't have any, at the moment don't have any interactions with the Northern Corridor.
But Anne is there in her capacity as the North Locality Consortium, not as Case.
Right, okay.
But Carol, if it's something we want to take offline, and if you want to come along to the next subgroup, that's absolutely, it was purely we put the request out for volunteers. Happy to have a chat with you at a later date, and happy for you to come along to the September group meeting.
Right, okay, thank you.
I'll put my email address and put my email address in the chat bar.
Okay, thank you.
I've got other hands up. I've got Brandon. Do you want it in?
I was just going to say, obviously, I'm aware of this digital meeting, but there seems to be a number of these digital groups. Is there going to be somebody that pulls them all together so there's sort of one consensus on this?
So the digital subgroup is as a result of the whole digital NL program, and I do believe that there is digital groups within the Lloyds area, and we will definitely be working together.
Does that answer your question, Brandon?
I'm afraid I lost connectivity, so I didn't hear.
Sorry, I do believe that there are other digital groups connected to Lloyds, and we will definitely be working together to ensure that there isn't any duplication, because that's not the purpose of the group. The purpose of the group is to avoid duplication. So it's in its infancy just now, Brandon. So we've only had one meeting. So we've just agreed kind of key actions and what do the representatives think are the focus for that group.
Yes, I mean, as I said, I'm aware of the duplications going on, and it just concerns me that it's I volunteer to come to this, and I volunteer on other things, and I find that us volunteers are turning up at things where people who are being, should we say, paid in inverted commas, surely they should be sorting this sort of stuff out in the background, so we don't have these duplications.
Okay, that's definitely something we'll take on board, Brandon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Isabel, I see your hand is up. Are you wanting in on this issue?
Yeah, it was just to say, you mentioned that you were making equipment, etc., and workshops available where there is a kind of retirement home or retirement complexes.
Yeah.
If we had a group of elderly in your area, but not in their individual homes, is that something you would support too?
Isabel, it was the funding was for the funding for the devices was through Connecting Scotland, and it was for elderly residents within a kind of retirement complex. But it's definitely something that I could speak to you later about how we could work to work with the elderly and out with the complexes.
Yeah, we just recently hosted something for the Lunch Club where they had been unable to meet for about 16 months.
Yeah.
But if they possibly had devices and we could support them in connecting with each other, it was really, they were really quite excited about an afternoon tea and getting together, but it was obvious that they had been very, very isolated and maybe some tuition in that area. But if they're not going to go to the expense of, say, a router in each home, then that would be an issue if they didn't have connectivity. I mean, the oldest resident there was 100. I would doubt very much that he has actually got a live connection to go to, but still very much with it. But could be taught so that he could still keep in touch.
Could we maybe chat about that and see what we can do?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks,
Anne-Marie. You'll get my details maybe if you're calling or whatever.
Yep. Great. Thanks. I'll put my email in the chat bar.
Cheers.
Anne-Marie, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you, John. I just wanted to raise, obviously, what you are speaking about, and pick up from where Isabel left off. Our community organisation already did receive some digital inclusion where we received some notebooks and the MiFi boxes and able to distribute them out to members within our community. And a proportion of them were of older residents. Now, we did have some further communications with a lady from North Lanarkshire Council, an officer who basically does instruct on digital things with members of the community in another area. And we had a bit of exchange with herself in the hope of bringing some of that instruction to our community, to those residents who did receive. Unfortunately, we never got any feedback from that. So I also would be interested in accessing some learning for those residents who have already received the digital inclusion, but need the instruction to actually help them facilitate the use of it. Yes, absolutely. We're a small number of volunteers that can only sort of do so much with people and, trying to assist them in the learning of it, whereas a class access of some sort would be definitely something more appropriate that would assist these people in being able to be digitally inclusive, where they can participate in all of these surveys and everything that are coming out, because these are the residents that voices should be heard. And if they don't have access to these platforms and the understanding of how to use them, then you are missing the goal. You are missing the goal there. So these devices have already been distributed within communities, but the learning of using of them is not facilitated for them. So again, I would be interested in having a one-to-one discussion with you on how we can address that for our community. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. I agree. Thanks.
I think in terms of Anne-Marie's point, it's not just a one-to-one with Anne-Marie. I think there has to be a wider discussion, because if you are looking at the digital exclusion at the present moment, then we have many, not just elderly people, but we have many families that are digitally excluded because they don't have the resources to go online. And this is where the wider issue about North Lanarkshire taking forward a policy in terms of digital inclusion, that you have to make sure that everybody has that opportunity, because
Absolutely.
we have libraries that the hours have been reduced, which means people's access to going online in the libraries has been vastly reduced. So we need to make sure that if we are talking about digital inclusion delivering locally, then these communities and these individual families and households are not excluded any further.
Absolutely.
So we need to start addressing those types of issues as well. So are there any other questions for Lynn? If there's no other questions for Lynn, I'm going to move on to item 8. And thank you, Lynn, for your presentation and answering the questions. Item 8, flexible funding, digital, which is Matt Costello. Matt. Matt, can you hear us?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can now.
Great, thanks. This might pick up on some of the points that were mentioned earlier in that part of the discussion there in relation to the flexible fund. The report that was issued on the update regarding the previous report that was submitted to the Community Board at the last cycle regarding the additional funding through the flexible funding arrangements, money from the Scottish Government to the Council and allocated across local communities. The report demonstrates that some of the work's been carried out through the communities team, community learning development team and financial inclusion. And Appendix 1 shows the funding for local community groups who have been awarded funding earlier this year in relation to the flexible fund for community groups. It gives a breakdown of that. And it's just to let you're aware, a lot of groups will be aware of a further fund that's came from the flexible fund in relation to opportunities for community groups to apply for devices to support the work that local community groups are undertaking at the moment in their local communities. And there's a fund open at the moment until the 6th of September for groups to apply for funding up to £1,000 per group. There's about £80,000 in that fund. Another aspect of that fund will be that they're looking to do some training, provide training opportunities for community groups in particular, but also for volunteers across community groups. And that's something else we're looking at and working that up just now in conjunction with other partners in, for example, New College, Lanarkshire. Maybe we can look at some along the lines of train the trainer, for example, to enhance the work that local communities can do in terms of improving digital exclusion. So that's just in relation to that report, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Matt? See any indication of questions? Any comments? Nope. Everybody seems to be happy tonight, Matt, with your report on digital.
Anne-Marie raised her hand, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Anne-Marie. Sorry. On you go.
Yeah, just to what Matt's stating there. So can I just ask for a wee bit of clarification, Matt, with regards to what you're stating there about the fund that's opened and the application that you can apply for £1,000. So within the remit of that application, would it be acceptable to apply for that funding to be used to hire an instructor to address people who have maybe already been included in the digital avenues? Would that be acceptable within the remit of that application?
No, it wouldn't, Anne-Marie. This is for devices and equipment.
Thank you.
Okay. That answered your question, Anne-Marie. Any other questions? No other questions. Move on to the community partnership updates, board development sessions, and once again, Mark Costello.
Thanks, Chair. Community board development session. You may recall at the last meeting there was an input in relation to the community board development sessions, and we asked for any interest in participating in the development of the community board development sessions going forward. We've had some feedback from some community groups, and you may have been aware quite recently there was a questionnaire issued to a lot of different community groups, and we've had, at the moment, we're sitting about 26% feedback on that. We extended the closing date for that, and it's recently closed. But there's some early indications in terms of the main areas, the development that the community boards have identified relating to community asset transfer, participatory budgeting, local outcome improvement plans, the budget process for the council and other partners, and partnership working in general. Some other areas were about managing conflict within boards, managing priorities, and how we address and tackle ensuring we have seldom heard groups involved in the processes that we're undertaking. Now we're looking at that, that'll be looked at a bit more further. There'll be a more detailed report will be provided for the community boards in relation to the work that's been undertaken from the questionnaire. A timetable will be developed in relation to the community board development sessions, and this will be communicated out across all the community boards over the next few weeks, next several weeks, as we pull that together, and we'll make sure that everybody's made aware of that and the opportunities for further training and development, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt? No
Can I ask a question, Chair?
Carol? Yeah.
The survey that you're talking about that was sent out, it wasn't received by all community groups. What was the remit of the people that was supposed to receive it?
The survey would have been sent out to the groups, community planning partners as kind of statutory partners, and also those groups who are deemed to have been like representative organisations like community forums, tenants and residents associations, anchor organisations. That's the groups that were sent out. They weren't sent out to every individual group on that basis.
The Northern Corridor Community Forum and Mollinsburn Tenants and Residents Association did not receive the survey.
Well, I need to check that, Carol. I'm sorry if that's been the case. We'll need to check the list for that.
We can certainly
get it sent out to you if you want to.
Well, what I actually did was I got a copy from a community council, which I filled in and sent back, although it was after the closing date for it. So I hope that it's been taken into consideration. But I do think that when information like this is being asked of the community and asked of stakeholders, that it needs to make sure that it is sent out to all people involved and not just a select few.
Oh, absolutely. And if it's missed out groups, it should have went to. I do apologise for that. It's just been an error in that regard, but certainly not intentional to miss anybody out. Absolutely not.
Could you make sure that there's a which I would have thought that they would have done, that they had like an email list that was just purely set up so that anything that was going out was automatically sent out to the email list, rather than having to select people, because this seems to keep happening where different people are missed out at different times.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Carol raises an important point, Matt, and it's something we've certainly asked for before is a directory of community organisations in the Northern Corridor, because there are a number of community organisations that seem to be omitted in terms of survey work or other work that's been done by the council officers. I'm thinking about some of the seniors groups, some of the other groups that are out there that are meeting or trying to meet on a monthly basis, but they don't seem to be included in any of the consultation process. So it might be useful if at some stage that there's some kind of community audit carried out of community organisations, so we do get an accurate and up-to-date reflection of what the activity is out there. But I know that I don't think Maddie's with us any longer, but I know that Emil's still here.
I am here.
Oh, sorry, Maddie, I didn't see you on the screen. It might be useful to sit down with Vaniel at some point and look at what community organisations are registered in the Northern Corridor, so that we actually do get an accurate reflection of the views of all the community organisations that are active within the area.
Yeah, we've just I mentioned earlier we had sent out this new form, both by post to those who didn't have an email, and to those with an email we sent by email, to try and capture more up-to-date information. Our challenge is that not everybody replies, so it actually gets really hard we do our best, but any help, it might be useful actually to see whether there might be some possibility of collaboration to try and check the data that we do collect with people who might have a bit more local knowledge. Camille, you're here, aren't you? my colleague Camille, is he here?
Yes, he's there.
I'm here,
Yeah,
Mandy,
you're here. Yeah, Camille, it might be quite good for us to have a chat about that, because we'll do our best, John. But as I say, it's a question, and particularly smaller groups don't always reply, and some of their postal addresses are care of community venues, which of course are closed, so it gets quite difficult. But yes, thank you for that.
Okay, are there any other questions or any points to Matt? If there's no other questions,
I was just going to say, in response to that point that you raised, John, surely can't we have the list that you have published now, and we can equally add to it if we're aware of people that are missing? Without a list, we haven't even got a starting point.
would that be possible, Matt, to get a circulate, even if you circulate it to the Northern Corridor Community Forum, so the Community Forum can have a look at it to see if there are groups that are missing from the list that should be added, they feel should be added.
Chair, we'd need to be careful with that, because there is GDPR concerns regarding us sharing information we hold on behalf of other organisations. So we can certainly ask for people to contribute their names and organisations for the list. We can certainly share that. We can check that against the information we have, but we wouldn't be too keen on sharing information with people without their consent. We might ask, try to contact all the groups first of all, see if they're happy with to share that. We can certainly look at on that as an approach.
It probably would make sense for us to collaborate, because we've just sent out a information form, and we actually ask for explicit consent that we can share not personal information, but we ask for consent, because obviously if a group is out there supporting the community, unless it's a personal email, the name of the group and where they meet and what they do, legitimately is in the public domain. And I don't think
I know what you're saying. Marty. We've had situations before where we've done that, and it's led to complaints, etc. happening. So we need to be careful with it. That's all I'm saying. More than happy to speak to yourself about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, because some groups maybe are oversubscribed and or want to be a closed group. So I do realise they have to give consent. What I was saying is the form we've sent out actually asks for that consent up front. So maybe if we liaise, yeah, that's great. We'll do that.
Yeah,
thanks.
Absolutely. I think it's best to talk about it, to see what we can do and see if we can pull together the most comprehensive list possible.
Okay, that would be useful if you came back with that, because I would challenge you on the GDPR issue, Matt. As Maddie said, the names of organisations that are already out there, and many of them are claiming public funds, should be known to the local communities that they're claiming to represent. But I'm not asking for personal information. I'm not asking for names, email addresses or telephone numbers. All I'm asking for is a list of the community organisations that are registered either with the council or with FANL, so that we all understand what community groups are actually in existence, because there could be the potential for duplication in some communities by organisations that are doing the same thing and using public funds to deliver the same sort of programmes or same kind of message. So it's just that if you could speak to Maddie and try and get something resolved, so that we understand what the landscape is out there, and understand what community groups are there and what ones are being contacted. So
absolutely, Chair, we'll do that.
Okay, are there any other questions, points to Matt? If there's no other questions or points to Matt. Oh, sorry, Isabel, you had your hand up.
Sorry, John, you just kind of qualified that with Matt. There's no data protection issues with the name of an organisation if it's a checklist. There's no personal information on that list. If you've got a list that says Gapcosh Residents and Tenants Association or Glenboy Development Trust, there's no personal information or data on that, and it just lets us know the list of organisations, and we can all fill in the blanks if people have difficulty in getting in contact with each other.
Yeah, Chair, through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm aware of that, Isabel. Absolutely, I was referring to other information that's held in relation to that may not be able to share as widely. I totally understand the information pertaining to groups, so that is widely available.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just ask one more question? The report that Matt was talking about sending out or sharing with the group, can I ask when that is likely to be issued?
That's getting worked on at the moment, Carol, and once we have the comprehensive information from the evaluation from that taking place, and we'll look at a timetable for that. I can't give you an actual date for when that will be, but it will certainly be before the next board cycle. As we move towards that, we'll get it out as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. If there's no further questions, move on to the next report, item 2. I think it's 9.2, Local Development Programme. Is it, we've covered that, Mark?
Thanks, Chair. It's just myself. Again, this report just gives you an update on the local development projects for the Northern Corridor area. Gives you an idea of the prioritisation that work has been undertaken, the community discussions and the preparation where possible so far for the project proposal forums that have been pulled together. We're now moving, so we've now appointed staff within the team to look specifically at projects in relation to the local development programme, and appointed a project development officer to take forward these over the next 5 financial years that's been approved so far by the council in relation to that. Consultations will commence when we have some concept designs in place for any projects that are taken forward, but we very much encourage local communities to engage with us in relation to the development of projects going forward. That's really all on that.
Right, thank you, Matt. Any questions to Matt on that issue? Isabel? You're on mute, Isabel.
Can I thank you, Matt? I think you gave out the forum what we discussed at the last meeting. Is it possible to actually give us the criteria associated with any development programme? You know, I might be stupid enough to put something forward that really isn't appropriate for that programme. I don't actually know what the criteria is in and around those programmes, if indeed you have any.
Yeah, in the report that was issued, the report I'm referring to just now, in relation to that, there is a list of criteria within that. And if you wanted to have a wee look at that report,
okay,
there is a section on criteria.
Cheers, thank you.
Okay, any other questions to Matt? There's no further questions.
I've put my hand up, John. It's
Sorry.
Brad. I was just going to say, in Auchinlock, we have a project that's on that programme that was postponed from previous years. Is it likely to be done during this year?
Which project is that, Brandon? Can you?
That was the entrance feature.
That is one we have on there. It's a year one priority. So it's one that we have done a project brief for.
Yes.
And that's with the team just now. So that's certainly one we'll take forward.
Okay.
And that will happen this financial year?
I can't guarantee exactly what will happen, but it's something that's been looked at by the team just now. But be assured that it'll be done as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thanks, Brandon. Anne-Marie?
Thanks, John. Matt, can I just ask with regards to the list that actually appears, on it there is a reference to what is Steps Running Track. Now, this has been relayed in information to the community that at one point it was supposed to be a running track. Information was then relayed that at one point it was to be a BMX track, and our community was never consulted with regards to that. So it was really down the line to us that a community consultation that we had as a community organisation, that we could consult the community on this particular area with reference to either running track or BMX track, and neither of these items were at the forefront of the consultation results. So I would like to possibly speak to someone separately with regards to that particular item to find out a wee bit more details about it, and obviously share with you the results that we have from community consultation with regards to that particular item.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you would have
more than happy to have a further discussion with you off table regarding that.
To clarify exactly what this is, because as I say,
at the moment, sorry, Well, we're certainly more than happy to have a discussion with you off table regarding that, Emery, see in terms of community consultation, etc. going forward.
Councillor McLaren, you wanted in?
Yes, Chair, it's just to give a bit of clarity on that. 2017-2018 consultation was held in Chryston School down the campus. All parties were invited. A lot of people from Steps turned up, Muirhead, and they were all given sheets of paper, asked what they would prefer in their area, and all the areas put down what they wanted. The one that was put forward for Steps was a BM extract to be put on the park with the one goalpost that's up there, to put in that and have it in that area. Unfortunately, it was misread and it was put down as a running track. Now, Liano, back up on this, that was supposed to be changed. Meeting after meeting, we've asked that this was changed to a running track so there's no confusion, to a BMX track so that there were no confusion over it. And that's what's been applied for as a BMX track, not a running track. I hope that clears that up.
Okay, as Matt said, you can, if Anne-Marie and Matt get together and have a chat about what exactly, how we can change that, Councillor McLaren, and then see, take it forward from there. I've got Claire Williams.
That's fine, Chair. That's fine.
I just wondered if it's useful to bring forward one of the community points while this is under discussion. And it was something that I raised at the community forum, which was that we saw this paper and it appeared a prioritisation process had been undertaken as an external process without consulting the members of the community board. I subsequently had a call from the communities team explaining that it's not a prioritisation process, it was a what is deliverable process. And I just really want to say that's an important difference in language. You know, I'm sure the groups are quite willing to accept that the council will choose to deliver what is actually deliverable, but when we see words like prioritisation being done behind the scenes, that's not community empowerment. So my point for later on was, please choose your language carefully in these papers, that we all read the papers on the council website now. So that's it.
Right, thanks, Claire. If Matt can take that on board, it is the choice of language, and it is also about decisions that are being made. And if we are working towards community boards and community involvement under the Empowerment Act, then communities have to be properly advised and engaged with to ensure that whether it's called prioritisation or deliverable programmes, then the language has got to be clear in that, Matt.
Just to come out in that, Chair, I don't know, there has got to be an element of prioritisation in relation to this as well, because we do have projects that have been sitting for a while that are deliverable, and therefore if we have a project that is deliverable that's only just come into the team, then we will prioritise the ones that have been there for a while beforehand. So there is an element of priority. We also look at that in terms of, are there community groups involved in it? Is there community support for it? If that's the case, and there is a lot of, I have to say that we do discuss with local communities. There is the whole idea behind the project proposal forums coming forward is that local communities put a lot of information into that, and that's what we take forward on that basis, and that helps to determine whether something is able to take forward. In terms of prioritising it, yeah, I'll take on board the points that have been raised there in relation to that, but we do have to consider ones. Obviously, if there's something in a budget, well, we've got a certain amount of budget, then we will take things forward before we'll take others. If it's a bigger budget, we have to wait longer for, etc. That's the process we have to adopt, and we have to do that within the council on that basis as well.
Okay, Alice, you wanted in?
Thanks, Chair. Matt, would you be able to help me understand the status of Dunalister Drive play area, which is in a very, very bad state of repair, and there's been several representations made to the Community Council regarding the Dunalister Drive play area. So I have the report in front of me, and I'm looking at Appendix 2, and it does, despite the arguments regarding the use of language in this document, what is the status of Dunalister Drive play area? If you could help me with that, Mark.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Alice, through you, Chair. Well, We're hoping to start community consultation on that project within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Once that community consultation takes place, we'll then move towards, later on in the autumn, move towards preparing tender documentation for that to go out to tender, with a view to that coming back before the end, hopefully, before the end of the calendar year, in terms of the tender document, and then hopefully start to put that project into the ground earlier in the new calendar year. But that will all depend on the availability of contractors to deliver that. But that's certainly the intention behind that one, Alice.
Thanks very much. That would be very, very good news for the residents of Dunalister Drive. Thanks very much, Matt.
Problem at all.
Right, I've got Anne-Marie.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to come back to the running track scenario there and what John had relayed as well, that there was a previous consultation. So I would like to ask the question as to why, when we were having our community consultation, that the instructions from Mr. John McLaren to Claire Williams was that we were to consult the community as to what they would like to see. So if that decision was already made, why were we asked to consult our community with regards to a running track that was seemingly on a hold list with X amount of money next to it, but then really it was then going to be a BMX track? No, it was a
Anne-Marie, is that you finished? Yeah. Could I suggest that rather than getting into the discussion tonight, that Matt's agreed to have a off the table discussion with you about the ins and outs of that. So could I suggest you take it up with Matt there and then try and move the issue forward from that? Anne-Marie, you're mute. Okay. Isabel Kelly.
Just to go back to Matt's point about prioritisation and obviously what the council can achieve or not achieve and what's been on a list for a long time. I think the point we're trying to make, Matt, it's not to say that obviously the council's resources, you know, it's finite in terms of what they can achieve, but any list we would like to see coming from this community board based on the length of time that something that's been there and based on a budget, and that we decide, whereas the council is still deciding what the community is getting based on what they can afford. But we might have a different list and it's just as effective affordability wise, but we're not getting the opportunity to do that.
Can I come in, Chair? Well, I would have to say that the local development programme list is community-led projects. This isn't projects that's come out there from officers. I mean, if the local community has got any projects that want to be included on that list, we've asked repeatedly at community board meetings in the previous community matters, local area partnership meetings for local groups to bring that forward. We can maintain a holding list of projects and they can be brought in for support as and when we're able to support them financially.
I'm sorry, I don't think I'm making my point clear. It's maybe me that's the problem. What we're saying is you have a list. That list has not been drawn up by the community. It's been drawn up by the council. Now, if you say, listen guys, these projects have been here for a number of years, so we've prioritised them by time and affordability through a 2-year period, let's say, it might be that the community would decide that certain projects are moved in the list in a different way. We're putting projects forward, but the council is still making the decision about when and how we get it. And it's the rationale around the decision making. We realise that the budget you know, determines what we can get. There's not a problem with that. We realise that the budget doesn't go on forever. But what we're saying is, if there's 7 or 8 projects there, let the community decide which order those projects are rolled out on and what they see as immediate or would make a difference with it. If something's needed for Moody's Burn or Steps and there's a project there for Gartcosh and it's not that important, then if the other project justifies a priority, but we're not getting into that discussion, Matt.
No, but I think that's part of the discussion that's pulled together when we're doing the project proposal forums, Isabel. That is something that is, we do consult with local community groups. We do determine whether there is a demand for a project. And if we had a project sitting on the list there's evidence across all the 9 boards over this cycle of community boards where we've taken projects off that have been on for a number of years, but because the local community have decided that they no longer wanted to pursue particular projects, have no longer an interest in it or a need for it. So we do, as part of this process, we do discuss that with groups, and as much as we can, we'll then take that on board for going forward. But we can't do any. I think we do quite a lot of that. We do that through the project proposal. That's why I'm saying we really want local groups to be involved in this as much as we can. But ultimately, as a team, we've got to make decisions as to what ones are feasible, which ones can be done, which ones are technically deliverable. We have to make decisions on that, and that's what we have to take forward.
That's the crux of the problem, Matt. You don't need to decide. You know, community matters don't need to decide. There's a list of projects there. There's a spend that you can afford.
No, Isabel, with all respect, I would disagree, because a community might come up with a list of 6 projects they want to deliver, but 4 or 5 of those projects might not be able to be delivered for a number of different reasons. Whether the ground's not suitable, there's the cost of preparing the ground for work makes the project undeliverable. These are things we have to do. We have to consider. The community would have that level of information.
Should we have a subgroup, basically, for local development programmes where there is people from the community on that as well, so that we can see if you're getting criticised tonight about the order of projects or us not being involved in the projects, when there's probably very valid reasons for you doing it. You don't get up in the morning to decide to do that out of badness. But what I'm saying is, none of the people here present know the reason why those projects have been prioritised in a certain way. And you might have done it for very good reasons, but nobody here knows what those reasons are.
Hopefully you can take them.
I think I've just tried to explain some of the reasons behind that. I don't think that we're not given any reasons for that. I think there is a rationale as to why we're trying to take that forward.
Yeah, I agree that with you, Matt, that you've given a rationale tonight for the reasons why you've taken the programme forward the way you've taken the programme. I think what the community reps are asking for is that if there is decisions about the ground's not suitable or the project's more costly than what originally was priced at, things like that, it would be useful to feed that back to the community so the community fully understood.
We absolutely would feed that back. If a project can't go ahead for whatever reason, we will certainly feed that back as to what the reason is for that, that it's too costly, or whatever the reason. For example, there's some projects we are doing, just for example, maybe a car park, and underneath that car park there's a gas main or a water main that might cost us £30,000 or £40,000 to move. We'll come back and we'll give that. We're more than happy to share that information as that goes forward, and we'll put that into the report.
Thank you, Matt.
I think that's what people are asking for. I've got 2 hands, well, I've got 3 hands up. I'm just clarifying. I've got Alice, I've got Carol, and I've got Claire. Claire, I think, indicated she's not wanting back in. Alice, do you want back in? Nope, she's hands down. Carol, do you want in?
Yes, Chair. It was just to reiterate what Isabel's saying, in the fact that, you know, there's no kind of community. The community, when we were asked to come together to to discuss the LOIPs and things like that, we looked at it not from our own personal groups perspective, but we looked at it as an overall for the Northern Corridor as a whole. And I think if there was a subgroup that, as Isabel's suggesting, that was perhaps maybe more connected with yourselves when decision making is being made. You know, there are projects that, yes, communities may put forward and may have a lot of community involvement and all the rest of it to put forward, but we also appreciate that perhaps while we're waiting to get that, you know, project, there may be something come up in a different area within the Northern Corridor that we even ourselves would say, well, that's a higher priority than what our project necessarily is, even though, you know, there's been a lot of community involvement from the area that's looking for the project. So, you know, it's a chance of giving us the opportunity to say, well, you know, that project might be more important, you know, right now, and priorities over time change as well. So although a priority, you know, a project may be high priority at the time it was submitted, you know, it's not, for an example, the welcome sign or the entrance for Mollinsburn, which is on the list as year one, part of the reason for having that was so that we could get a 30-mile-an-hour speed sign put into the sign for Mollinsburn, because we were in an area where our 30-mile-an-hour speed sign was a distance away, whereas now we're still on it and it's still there. And don't get me wrong, we still want an entrance for Mollinsburn, but the priority for the 30-mile-an-hour speed sign has changed because the council have changed it from the entrance to it from a 30 down to a 40, changed it from a 30 to a 40. So it means that we now have actual 30 legal signs in the entrance, you know, at the entrance to Mollinsburn. So we don't require to put that into the entrance sign into Mollinsburn. So from that point of view, our priority has changed. So if a different area came up with a project that they wanted to do, and we ourselves, you know, thought that's of more importance at this precise moment, that's something that maybe would help people because of the pandemic, for example, because this sign has been going on since way before the pandemic. In fact, it's been going on since your 2017-18 meeting. That's when it was put on the list. So, you know, there may be projects that would come up that we would ourselves would say that's a higher priority because it would help people, likes of your digital inclusion and stuff like that. It would help people get contact with other folk. So it's just giving the community the opportunity to say, look, we want, you know, we're quite happy to take a step back and let that other project go ahead of us.
Matt, do you want to respond to that? Or
Chair, with all respect, I think that's what we're doing. I think we're giving people opportunities to do that. I know Colin has been involved with yourself in this one. I think yourself, Carol, in terms of preparing information relating to that particular project. We're more than happy to listen to feedback from yourself on that. And if it means prioritising something else over that, then we'll take that on board and we'll include that. Can I caution against subgroups and that kind of approach to this, because preparing projects like this is a very dynamic approach, and it's something that we've got fairly strict timescales for that in terms of taking projects forward, in terms of getting out to tender and getting projects delivered, etc. And as much as we absolutely want to hear the words of the local community and the feedback for that, and that, I think the project proposal forms that we want to take forward for these projects are vital in doing that. We'll share that again with all the groups so that people can give us their feedback on that. We're more than happy to, the projects that are on there just now, if people have got any particular issues with any of those going forward, we're happy to have further discussions in relation to that going forward. But I think we need to start cracking on with some of the delivery as much as we can with these projects, and I would look for the community board support and allowing us to do that.
Okay.
I think it's, sorry Chair, it's just that I think it's more the list that is not included that we would like to see whether any of those we would rather, you know, perhaps step back some of the ones that are on the list and put forward any of the ones that aren't on the list. And it's not the case of you know, for you know, it's difficult to carry out the project or feasibility or anything else. Some of them could be just new projects that have come up and they've been, you know, the older ones have been prioritised over the newer ones, which I can understand as well. But sometimes, I would like to think as well within the Northern Corridor area, we do work well together as different organisations. We care about the different areas and organisations, and you know, if it means that there's a project that a different group and we consider that a different group would be better, and the people you know receiving the project would benefit more from than something else, then you know we would put that forward. But it's more the projects that are not on the list, purely not for financial reasons, but for you know, as in they can't be done, but more the ones that are maybe further down the list that we would like to see.
I'm not going to take any more discussion on this.
Chair, could I come in? Sorry, Chair, apologies. I know we've gone kind of had a big discussion on this, but I just want to kind of, you know, a couple of things, if that's okay. So the LDP, obviously, I think I can't remember the exact amount for the Northern Corridor. I think it's about 127,000 in that territory for this year. All the 9 community boards, in the way that the budget was agreed, is all community boards for the first year have got an increased level of funding, and then for the next 4 it's basically the same amount of money for those 4 years. So obviously, first year we try as best as possible to get some of the projects that may well be basically more costly, such as the Alistair Drive. Now, £60,000 has been allocated, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's going to cost £60,000. It could cost more than that. For the entrance features, I think, I can't quite remember, it's like 10 or 15,000. I think maybe 15 for Auchinloch and 10 for Malmesbury on the other way around. Again, we've got to do the feasibility on that, and although we've got the brief, we need to go and do more, and the chances are that's potentially going to cost more money. So all the projects, it's just an indicative until we can get to the stage where Russell, who's our landscape architect, can actually do the real kind of nitty-gritty costings on it. We won't actually know the appropriate cost. So the one main reason, this is more for Alice's there as well, is that the one main reason why that's been put on the first year is because it was one of the most expensive, and it was to try and get it done in the first year, so that when we went on to the second or the third, because if £60,000 came out of those years, obviously, then it's going to leave actually not an awful lot left. I think maybe, I can't remember, but I think maybe for the years 2 to 5, it's maybe about 90,000. So if you took 60, you'd only have 30 left. So that was one of the areas. So, and I totally get that, kind of, whether you call it prioritization or any other word, there needs to be a way of making sure that we can deliver these projects. The projects that we've got on the LDP list going up from year 1 to year 5 are the projects that we have got in place just now. You know, I'm not quite sure what you mean about old, the projects that aren't on the list, Carol, but like Matt has said, if there are projects or ideas, we're absolutely delighted to get them. We want to engage with the communities. We want to make sure that we are actually delivering on what local people want, and we are maximising the monies in respect of community benefit. And a lot of times we use LDP not just to kind of singularly fund a project. We use it as maybe match funding for other monies to come in, and working with community organisations. We've got to be really clever about that, especially when we get to years 2 and 5, because there's less money. There's going to be more projects. And we need to make sure that in the Northern Corridor, everybody gets their say. So I just wanted to kind of, you know, we need to look at that. And I think the entrance features, I mean, Carol, I think that I mean, a while back, I maybe sent a proposal for them. If you could, that was really just as a kind of a paper trail in relation to the project. I wonder if you could maybe have a look at that and basically come back to me with the kind of the evidence and the need. It's really just a paper trail for the project. That would be, I'd really appreciate that.
I think, thanks, Colin, for that explanation, but I think what I'm picking up from the points that have been raised by the community members tonight, and from Carol's perspective, is if we are reviewing the list and there are community groups or the Northern Corridor Community Forum feel there could be some movement within those lists, then there needs to be a discussion around that. And I think everybody needs to be involved in that discussion, particularly the community groups that make the original proposal, because they need to be aware of the intricacies of what and the dynamics of what projects can go ahead and the costings. And I think costings, feasibility, any other issues that might arise when a project is put in, then that has to be discussed more widely. So hopefully if we can move it forward, and I'm sure there'll be some offline discussions with some of the community groups and individuals regarding the development programme in the future. So if we can move it forward from there. And next item on the agenda is local outcome improvement plan. I've got Colin and Leanne down to speak on this. Who's leading off in this?
That'll be me, Chair. Thanks very much. Just to say, obviously, at the last board meeting, we agreed on the local outcome improvement plan. We are just finalising the online update and the kind of front-facing document with our graphics department, and so we will be looking to kind of launch the formats very shortly, hopefully in the next kind of week or two, and obviously certainly we will take that forward once it's ready.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Any questions to Colin? Any comments? Don't see any comments or questions. If nobody wishing to speak, I'll move on. Thank you very much indeed for that. Next section in the agenda is community matters, input from local community groups, and there's a number of issues that have been raised there. We've got the first one is request to reverse the order of agenda items, and that's coming from the Northern Corridor Community Forum. Carol, Alice.
Thank you, Chair. We would just like to ask for the order for the community matters to be put first on the agenda rather than the general community board business and updates. Obviously, if there are updates that correspond to the issues raised, then obviously they would be discussed at the same time, as has happened tonight, in reverse order. But we would like to see the fact that this is supposed to be a community group, and it's supposed to be for the community to voice our concerns and raise issues, etc. We would like to be that the community is heard first.
Any comments? Any response?
Chair, I'm more than happy to rearrange the agenda to address that.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other questions, comments on that? Nope. Then move on to the second nomination of chair. I think if everybody's agreed, I think we've covered the nomination of the chair issue at the start of the meeting. Has everybody agreed to move on to the next item? Getting nodding heads here, and so it seems to be general agreement. Northern Corridor Health Facility.
Thank you, Chair. What we would like to find out is the North Public Partnership Forum exists to represent the views of the public on health and social care matters within the North Lanarkshire area. What we're trying to find out is that the membership of the forum covers the Northern Corridor, Kilsython Villages, Cumbernauld, and Wishaw, Murdiston and Fertisset community areas at present, although they are trying to obviously get some other community forums back up and running. However, at this meeting at the community board, there has been representatives from Health and Social Care Partnership, and it's been raised with previously at the board meetings where health has been raised, and what we're trying to find out is we sent in an attachment. I don't know if that's been given to the people that are present, but we sent in an attachment that had been issued, and what we're trying to find out is, can North Lanarkshire Council highlight where it is appropriate to take health and social care issues raised at the board to North Lanarkshire Council, when we as a board should be addressing these issues through community identified in the stakeholders network published by Health and Social Care.
I'm not sure if the best person to bring in.
I'll do my best. My name's Raymond Taylor. I'm the health and social.
I was just going to call you in.
Okay. I'm the health and social work manager, and I cover Cumbernauld, Coatbridge and Airdrie. And I had an email exchange with Carol a few weeks back now, talking about the new facility or proposed facility in Christen. That particular question, to be honest, I'm scratching my head about it. I'm conscious that with the Christen facility, the planning around that predated the boards. That was brought to forward during the LAP occasions, and I've looked at the document that Carol forwarded, and I'm very familiar with, I'd say, about 70% of the organisations that are listed there, but exactly how this board links with those and aligns with those other planning structures, I'm not certain, and I'll need to get advice on that. It might be that Matt has got a view on it. I find that helpful.
Matt, do you have a view on this?
Sorry, Raymond, I've lost signal towards the end of your input there.
So I think the question I've been asked is, how does the Health and Social Care Partnership, the Community Board, align itself with other council engagement structures? Is that right, Carol?
It's basically, to put it very bluntly, why should we be raising issues relating to health through this mechanism, through the community board, when, as far as we are concerned, the process and the stakeholder for raising health concerns and issues would be through the forum, as a member of the community, the Northern Partnership, Public Partnership Forum. Where do issues that are raised for health, what do the community board do with them?
I've got Andrew's hand up. I don't know if Andrew is the community board champion, has any views on this.
Yeah, I could possibly, because I think you've identified quite a key issue, I think, Carol, in that all of the engagement that's going on at the moment throughout the council, not just from the council, but also from our partners across North Lanarkshire. There is an element there of perhaps duplication. Perhaps we're missing opportunities to do joint or collaborate on engagement exercises, and also what's the best mechanism for feeding back. Is it the community board, or should it be something else? So this has been raised within the council and through our communities team, and had a discussion just this afternoon, actually, and unfortunately Matt wasn't there at the meeting, but we've agreed to undertake an engagement mapping exercise. In other words, to look at everything that's been consulted on, and also everything that's going to be consulted on across North Lanarkshire, to make sure that we do exactly what you're saying, that it goes to the right forum and it goes to the right people, and there's a mechanism to report back. So that's in its infancy. I have to say the community teams are just sort of looking at taking this forward now. So hopefully over the coming couple of cycles, you'll be able to see much more detail coming out with that, Carol.
Okay, I've got Isabel Kelly's hand up. Isabel?
Just to say, Andrew, the stakeholders in the mapping that the NHS Lanarkshire have issued are quite clear. We've got a community forum of community organisations, and they have a direct link and have got a seat at the Community Partnership Forum for Health. So that also feeds into the integrated board, etc. And you're sitting here saying we might bring up health issues, we might discuss those issues, and in fact, the actual route map to health issues, when we're looking at the LOIP, and we might be looking at the cardiac health in Moody'sburn, for instance, those issues should be dealt with through the Community Partnership Forum and through the health. Now, it's not to say that they might contact the North Lanarkshire Partnership for some resource or some help in some way, but the actual true root of the cause and the actual care for these patients should be delivered and should be acknowledged through that particular group. And we might be discussing health here, taking up time, and really we should begin through the proper channels. Because if we sit here and discuss it, and then we complain that nothing's been done, then quite clearly, you know, they're going to turn around and say, you were addressing the wrong group, you were addressing the wrong organisation, you should have been at Lanarkshire Health. So
Yeah.
we just really need to get this clear so that we're not faffing about with the wrong organisation.
Yeah, none of us get time to faff about, Isabel. I agree, and that's exactly the point that, you know, I'm 100% agreement with you. That's the purpose of the engagement exercise, so we can actually look at where are things best directed to. So you're right, because so we can focus on the issues that this board can do something about, and leave other areas to concentrate on what they're actually responsible for. So 100% agree with you, and that's the purpose and hopefully the outcome of what we're taking forward.
John, can I say something else as well? And that's about the fact, it's really the point that Brandon made earlier on in the meeting, that we do, as officers of the council and NHS Lanarkshire, speak to each other about these issues and try and come up with solutions, you know, prior to meetings like this. And just also to go back to the point that the exchange that email exchange that Carol and I had, I'm keen to come to the community forum to look at what's intended to be delivered through the Christen Clinic and how that compares with other facilities in North Lanarkshire, to make sure that there is at least as good a service within this new facility as there is elsewhere.
Thank you, Raymond. Anybody, Carol, you've still got your hand up. You want back in?
It's really just to reiterate. I know that Raymond is quite happy to come and meet us, and you know, that's very welcome, and it's very welcome to see the openness and you know, to be prepared to discuss with us you know, what we're looking to discuss. But the point is that on the list of stakeholders, nowhere does it mention either the LAP or the newly formed boards. The NHS Lanarkshire's mechanism for communication with the community is through community forums. So I don't see the relevance in discussing any health issues or anything like that at this community board, when the proper channel for raising the issues and actually getting the issues looked at and investigated, or a response back from them, would be through the PPF.
Carol, before I ask anybody to respond to that, could I suggest that and make a plea to Andrew that when the fellow officers that are the community or the board champions, when they're doing the mapping exercise in terms of where would be the best route to take issues through, then can we get a look at it? Can you do that quite quickly? Because I think there are a number of issues that we need to be clear about in relation to what are the right organisations or the right process to raise issues such as health and there may be other issues that the community might want to raise, but we need to be clear in terms of your spider diagram, what organisations are there, what structures and what I would say democratic structures are there to actually take forward the issues that are being raised by communities. So I think Carol's right that there's no point in discussing issues at this board meeting if this board has no way of influencing or impacting upon the decisions that are being made by another organisation in relation to, in this instance we're talking about the health board. So it would be useful to try and get that done as quickly as possible, so we can everybody's clear about what issues can go on the agenda or should be on the agenda, and what issues this board can actually take forward and have an impact in the decision-making process.
Yeah, comes from this board, and there's a Governance for Communities group. I think it's going to be established, and it will meet every quarter after the cycle of every community board. If there's issues that are emerging from that, then the purpose of that group is to direct those to the most appropriate service, agency, whatever. so as to deliver on that action. Those actions will then be monitored. So that's the purpose. So we've got that constant direction to the most appropriate people, but that mapping exercise will help with that as well.
Thank you. Isabel, you've still got your hand up. Are you want back in?
Yeah, it was just, is it Mr. Taylor? Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Raymond. Yeah.
Raymond, thanks for offering to meet with the community forum. But just as an example, when we're talking about the health facility at Knyston, we as community groups spoke at the LAP and, you know, very, very clearly asked for a full health centre. Now, what we're getting is a health facility, and the clinic, in terms of service delivery that is currently in Muirhead, is not suitable, and that was the reason for its replacement as a like-for-like service, with a couple of additions in mental health and addiction being added. Now, that is not what we asked for as a community, and we did that through the LAP, when quite clearly we should have been going to the partnership forum and making our case there. And what we want to do is make sure that we never do that again, because we are distinctly unhappy with the facility that is going in Muirhead, especially from a service delivery point. You know, the services that might be there might be quite an inclusive list. How that's delivered to the patients and the community is a very different story, but that's for a discussion with you offline. That's the point in the meeting. But there's a clear case of where the mapping hasn't been done properly. We raised that at LAPS, and quite clearly, I'm sure if the health board, there was no consultation associated with the service. I met with Graham Johnston and I think a guy called Gus, and we were told, Mrs. Kelly, it's a like-for-like service. The building is virtually getting condemned. It is in Muirhead. It has to be replaced. You know, it's not suitable for delivering healthcare services. That's why it's getting changed. But there's no way that you're getting a health centre. So there wasn't any process in that. And obviously we went down the wrong route. That's an example.
I'd be keen to tease some of that out. I mean, certainly that clinic is on its last legs and needs to change, and we do need a facility to bring many of the service over from Greater Glasgow Health Board. That's been an aspiration that NHS Lancashire's had since 2014. But I'm really keen to come and tease that out.
Thanks very much, Raymond. It's much appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
I think the Raymond's indicated they'll go along to the Northern Corridor Community Forum and address the issues from the community forum and look at the best way to take issues forward. In terms of the point you made, Isabel, in terms of the North the partnership forum, the issue about the health clinic, the clinic and the health centre was raised and has been raised for the last 3 years at the NPPF. The issue is, and I think there is strength in the argument of the voices coming together and making that case, and we did certainly make the case at the LAP that the Northern Corridor needed a health centre rather than just a like-for-like clinic. But that's an issue you can take up with Raymond at the Northern Corridor Community Forum, and hopefully can progress it from that meeting. And Raymond will hopefully have all the answers at the Northern Corridor Community Forum for the satisfaction of the community reps that attend. Then I move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the issue about the community champion. And I think that has been mostly covered at the start of the meeting tonight. So if with agreement, can we move on to the next item, which is the town hubs. And once again, we've got somebody for the Northern Corridor Community Forum wants to address that issue. Is that Alice or Carol? Isabel.
It's actually Isabel.
It's Isabel, sorry. Isabel.
I drew the short straw on that one, I'm afraid. The town hubs is going to be raised at the Policy and Strategy Committee in September. We just really strongly would like it noted that there has been no consultation in community hubs and town hubs. There have been 2 briefings. We attended a briefing in February, March time, where we were told there would be 8 community boards and there would be no town hub for the Northern Corridor. We were then asked to go to a presentation where we were told there was now 9 hubs and the hub was Christen. What has taken place is briefings. There has been no consultation. And each of the communities might have schools or might have, in the case of Gapcosh, I won't bore you because I say it all the time, absolutely no facilities whatsoever, no amenities, nothing. So when we heard about the strategy about town hubs and community hubs, and we spent 2 hours speaking to Des Murray about it, telling us about the Community Investment Fund, and Mrs. Kelly, you're down for a school, you're going to get a community hub attached to that, you're going to get some council services in there, you're going to get some retail in there, and quite frankly, what has been promised is not going to be delivered, because what you're deciding is there is a school, and if there's a school and a piece of land, what is needed and what can you fit in? We're sitting in a situation where a school that was delivered, that was supposed to be delivered, consultation was nearly 4 years ago. The school's never been delivered. The site has fell apart, which we told the council it would happen. There's no through road to get to the school. They need a bridge over a water course. It was an absolute disgrace. They're now looking at a football pitch where that land will not be sufficient to be able to give our community what we need. We've already did a community hub survey. We've already submitted it to Lanarkshire, North Lanarkshire, and you try to go through every single process that's available with North Lanarkshire to try and improve your area, and nothing works. Nothing works. We'll be at a stage where we may as well shut up shop because every blade of grass has been put over to developers. So therefore, even if we want a community centre, even if we want a football pitch, if we want outdoor sports or indoor sports, there is no land to put it on. And the areas that have been suggested to put them on within the community growth area, the triggers are so late in the amount of house units that have got to be built, I'll be dead. And most of us around this table will be dead by the time we get them. And where they're going to put them is so far away from the population that it's intended to serve, that it'll be so small that it can't serve that population. And it's like a train that's coming to hit you, and you keep telling people, put the brake on, put the brake on, and they just keep making the same mistakes, and nobody's listening. And we've got these town hubs getting rammed down our throat, but we actually thought there's a community investment fund there. There's a way that it's possible for communities to have a voice, be consulted about what is going in these town hubs, what is going in the community hubs, and that's not happening. 2 briefings. So as well, we also did a survey, and that survey isn't going to be available for several months. So I would like to ask the elected representatives that are here tonight, and the ones that are there will be getting a letter, to ask what decisions are getting made at this Policy and Strategy Committee meeting, and what's getting passed when we're sitting here and we actually did a survey and told them what we thought of the presentations and of the way that they're going forward with it. And that's not going to be available for months, but decisions are getting taken in September. And if that continues, what is the point of coming to community boards? What is the point of being a community organisation, trying to do the best for your community when you never, ever get a voice? There's no point in it. So the culture must change. It's got to change. So I've been elected to deliver that message in behalf of the Northern Corridor Forum. So that's the message delivered, guys.
Okay, is there any comments, any response to that?
Chair, I had contacted Charles McCabe when that came in as an agenda item, and I've got a wee brief feedback. I don't know anything other than what I'm feeding back, so don't shoot the messenger because I don't know any further information that I've got. It was just to say that in terms of what you've said, you've put forward, yes, it definitely was briefing sessions. That was what they were intended to do, and they were advertised as that. They weren't advertised as consultation events. As outlined in the public briefings, the location for the town hub was predetermined in the Northern Corridor. And I think we kind of know that anyway. In the policy and strategy report, the committee has been advised of the public choice where there was more than one option. So there was public choice if there was more than one option of site for the kind of town hubs. And that's all I have to feedback. Thank you.
I think the point's been made, Isabel, on behalf of the Northern Corridor Community Forum. I think as the community board champion, then I think it's something Andrew has to take back to his colleagues to make them aware that there is still concern. And I know that the background to the issues in the Northern Corridor, because we fought to get the Northern Corridor recognised as a community board, and while all the other 8 community boards were built around town centres, Kilsyth, Cumbernauld, Coatbridge, etc., etc., then there is an issue, still an issue here about where we identify in the Northern Corridor as that it's the council's definition of town hub or town centre hub, because the term seems to be interchangeable. So it would be useful to get some feedback on the issues and the concerns that have been raised tonight by the Northern Corridor Community Forum.
Chair, could I just add one thing? There's one phrase that is stands out, and it is one of the 6 guiding principles put forward by NLC in its hub's publicity material, and that reads, designed by the community with NLC rather than for the community. And that, in this case, is not what has happened.
Okay, I'll definitely, I think certainly I've got the discussion with the community forum and just later in the next couple of weeks, so I'm happy to discuss type of issues there, because I think that was just you think there's a lack of communication and engagement with the Northern Corridor. But you know, being fair to the council, and I'm just putting myself in a community board there, but being fair to the council, we're all sitting here tonight. We have a community board. The council is listening, because a community board has been formed for the Northern Corridor. So to say that the council doesn't listen at all, I think is incorrect, and I think that's slightly unfair. But I'm more than happy to obviously discuss this when we meet in the next couple of weeks.
Okay,
Andrew, I would like to know, and I would like to be proved wrong, and so would the rest of my colleagues. But what has been asked and what has been decided upon in the Policy and Strategy Committee meeting in September, it's going forward to be passed, and there's been no consultation. So we're not being listened to, love. We honestly, we're not being listened to.
Isabel, there's no other decision getting made about the Northern Corridor in the Policy and Strategy Committee. The main purpose of the Policy and Strategy Committee in the end of September is they will be showing that the preferred options, where there was options in the town centres. So that's the main purpose of that report. Nothing will change for the Northern Corridor. If you like, we're still going to have to go through the engagement exercise about what do we all actually want to see within the community hub and everything else, but nothing will really be affecting the Northern Corridor as such in that report.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm conscious we've got 6 other items on the agenda from the community that still to be discussed, so I would like to try and get through them before midnight tonight. So I'm assuming that Andrew will take back the concerns that have been raised tonight on behalf of the Northern Corridor Community Forum, and the Community Forum will no doubt keep Andrew on the right track if he veers off what the Community Forum would like to see happening. So I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Community Board's Local Development Programme. I would once again ask if we've covered that issue under the earlier item with Colin's explanation. So if we can move past that item and go back to the Community Board's Training Needs Analysis, and that was put on the agenda by the Northern Corridor Community Forum.
Chair, that was brought up earlier as well during the discussion earlier on.
If you're happy that's been dealt with, then we can move on.
Yep, thank you.
The terms of reference, Community Board terms of reference, has the issues been covered to the satisfaction of the Community Forum?
Can I just make a comment, John?
Yes, Brandon.
Only to say that obviously it has come out a lot throughout this meeting, and maybe the terms of reference should make some points clearer as to exactly what the scope that this group can actually cover, because I think it's come out clear that maybe some of the points for discussion are not actually within the authority of this group to be making any comment on, so we're just wasting our time. We need to know exactly what it is we're here to do and get something done. We seem to come together at these meetings and talk through things, but nothing ever actually really gets done.
I think, once again, Andrew, sorry to pass this back onto your plate, but I think given that you are the liaison between the council and the community board and hopefully the community groups and the community forum, if you could take that back to your colleagues and, as Brandon said, look at it almost not quite a definitive statement on what issues community boards can deal with, so that we can concentrate the agenda to the satisfaction of everybody, if that's agreeable. Unless anybody has any other comments to make.
No, Chair, I'm happy to do that, but that won't be an overnight exercise. That will take some time, and that'll be across all boards as well, not just for the. I think but it's a fair point.
Right.
Chair,
sorry,
Chair. Can I just ask, there was feedback on the draft terms of reference that was asked on the Wednesday, 12th of May at that meeting. Can I ask if there's, can we get a written report on the terms of reference feedback that was given, and also the mechanism to employ to review the ongoing review and evolution of the terms of reference?
I think that would be Matt deal with that issue. Matt?
Sure. I think one of the things we mentioned tonight about the terms of reference is very much the point that Brandon made, and that's something we can have further discussions about bringing back more information relating to that particular part of the terms of reference and the coverage of the board to give a more, synopsis of that, what that covers, and that's something we can certainly look to do. I don't know in terms of the points on the 12th of May, I don't know there's no written report about the meeting that took place. If you're talking about the meeting that took place on the 12th of May, there's no written report in relation to that. That's just a meeting that took place between ourselves and some representatives. There's no particular written report in relation to that, Carol.
You had asked for feedback on the terms of reference, so could we have a written report on that? And what is, I mean, we've been told before that the terms of reference are as they are just now, but they will, they can change as time goes on. So what is the mechanism for doing that?
Well, that's just what I said there, Carol, just that we can bring back an outline about what we're talking about in relation to what the board can consider, etc., lifted from the terms of reference in relation to that. If you've got concerns about the terms of reference, as I said, we did feed that into the Community Empowerment Committee recently in relation to some of the concerns that have been raised before. That has been fed into the Community Empowerment Committee. That went back there, and there was no issues raised at the Community Empowerment Committee on Monday. But if there is other issues that you've got about that, I'd be happy to take a note of that and take that forward.
I think it's been raised at this community board a few times about the terms of reference, that people weren't happy with the terms of reference, etc. So I don't know why I actually did go and listen to the meeting that was on Monday, and to be quite honest, I was a bit shocked at the information that was given to the committee, because it did not represent what the feeling from the community board for the Northern Corridor, you know, actually is. It wasn't a true representation of any of the community board meetings.
Carol, can I ask, has anything been put in writing from the Northern Corridor Community Forum to Matt or to the elected members regarding the issues that you've raised tonight? Because it might be useful if we can get that in writing so that Matt is clear about what issues and definitive issues that we want to, or the Northern Corridor Community Forum want to see being addressed in terms of the issue, in terms of the terms of reference. Because as we discussed earlier tonight, the boards are an evolving process, and they are hopefully adapting and changing to the circumstances that arise and the issues that are being raised. So it might be, if we can get something in writing from the forum to go to Matt, that then they can consider as part of the process of looking at the structures. But that would also be an issue for Andrew as well, because Andrew and his colleagues would be looking at how the board structures operate and how best they redraft the terms of reference so that they do accurately reflect what the communities are looking for, especially Northern Corridor. Is that agreeable?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Carol's. Alice?
John, may I reiterate and support what Carol has already said? I have read the report to the Community Empowerment Committee regarding Community Board Cycle 4. And in terms of the terms of reference at paragraph 2.2.4.2, I'm confused as to what this is actually saying. It does not reflect the feeling of the Northern Corridor Community Board. It does not reflect the feeling of those who attended the special group to discuss the terms of reference. And at one point it says, it speaks about the final version of the terms of reference was updated. Then it moves on to say there's an ongoing review of these terms of reference. In my opinion, the terms of reference have not been addressed correctly. There has been no consultation on the terms of reference. It's unfinished business, and it has to be addressed. It's pivotal to the progress of this community board, and it needs attention urgently.
As I said, I've made the suggestion that the Northern Corridor Community Forum put together the points in writing, send them to Matt and Andrew, and await Matt and Andrew's response to the issues that are raised. Is that agreeable? Yep, Carol's nodding in agreement. I'm hoping everybody agrees that's the best way forward, because I think it has to be put in writing what the concerns are, because I think there still seems to be confusion about the discussions and the comments that are being made, or the concerns that are being raised at meetings. It would be useful if that was put in black and white so everybody understood what the issues were. Is that agreed? Yep. Right, moving on. The next item on the agenda is new litter bin rollout. And once again, this is for the community forum. Who's dealing with the new litter bin rollout programme?
Hi.
Anne-Marie.
Can I just check that you're hearing me okay, John?
You're breaking up slightly, Anne-Marie, but we can't hear you. No, you're losing it now.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that sounds a bit better now, Anne-Marie. No, we're still losing you, Anne-Marie.
Is that a bit better?
No, not getting you, Anne-Marie.
there seems to be a wee bit of difficulty, losing a bit of connection in and out there at the last.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out, Anne-Marie. Unless somebody else can take forward the issue, can I suggest we move on?
I mean, can I comment?
Brandon.
Whilst I understand the principles behind what they are doing, but again, I think the real issue here is the lack of consultation with the community. Had the communities been consulted with, then some sort of program could have been put together, and people could have been aware and maybe even educated as to why this was happening and how it was being delivered. In the area where I am, we have in excess of 10 litter bins in the area, which are going to be reduced to 3. I don't think the average member of the community will really understand why that is. So, you know, some sort of consultation or discussion would have been very helpful. We currently have a situation where we have 3 new bins in situ, but still all the other bins in situ. So now we have confusion, total confusion. And one of the new bins has been placed in a position where it is blocking an access. So it's just a shambles. And I think that's a description for much of what seems to happen.
Okay, any other comments?
Chair, what we were also wanting to find out is we're wanting clarification regarding the permanent removal of bins in recreational areas. Obviously, recreational areas are where, you know, people go to relax and, you know, perhaps have picnics or, you know, different things. But, you know, why remove the bins from those areas where people are more likely to have rubbish that would use the bins rather than, you know, leaving some there, and they're removing those and only putting them on public roads where the lorries can, you know, can empty them. And again, you know, I'd reiterate, there's been no consultation whatsoever, and, you know, taking them away from areas where people actually use, for example, in Mollinsburn, they're taking them away from the play park. The only actual, you know, public kind of area, recreational area that there is, they're taking them away from the play park, and that is the place where people go. So that, you know, if they had even simply asked the local groups, they would have been able to tell them what parts are used, what parts are not used, etc. Unless, of course, they've consulted with the people who actually empty the bins. But I'd like to know that.
I'm not sure if that would be an Andrew one or a Matt one, but clearly it's, once again, it's the issue again about the lack of consultation before, you know, the council impose a policy, and in this case it's the litter bins. And I think, as Carol said, one of the concerns is when you've got play areas where there was a litter bin that's now been removed, the fear is that you'll get more littering in the play areas. And some of these bins also doubled up as dog fouling bins. And there's concern that we might end up with, was it the poo bag trees developing around play areas where we're expected to take children to play, and people either just leave their bags behind or don't even bother with their bags because there is no bins in the immediate vicinity for them to actually deposit their poo bags in. So,
I mean, the purpose of I'll be honest, there was obviously publicity, and there has been and will continue to be publicity as the programme rolls out across North Lanarkshire. But there was publicity through the normal sort of channels as to why the council was taking this decision moving forward, and the purpose behind it, and the reason, and everything else. What we can do is consult in every single bin location. Physically impossible to do that. Yeah. What we will do is roll out a programme, and we'll explain the rationale behind, you know, maybe removing bins from play areas and having the bins at the entrance and the exits and access points to all the parks, with an emphasis on asking people to take their litter and deal with your own litter. You know, so that was one of the sort of key messages that was given out. And to be honest, we're rolling out, thousands of these bins throughout North Lanarkshire. We have had a small number, and it is a small number, of complaints with regard to the incorrect citing of a bin. Indeed, some bins that are scheduled to be uplifted every week will need to be, every 3 weeks will need to be uplifted every week because of the use. These are all things that will bed in, and we will change. But the vast majority of bins will be put in place without an issue. But we want to get this rolled out. We want to get it rolled out quickly.
Andrew, can I say that the normal channels that the council use are usually through the local press? The Northern Corridor doesn't have local press. We don't have any. No, it's Cumbernauld is the Cumbernauld News. Kilsyth is a local paper. Coatbridge and Airdrie have the Airdrie and Coatbridge Advertiser. There is no newspaper covers the Northern Corridor. So if the council are putting out publicity via the local press, then the majority of the Northern Corridor don't read or don't get access to local press because there is no natural newspaper covers the area. So there has to be other ways of communicating with the communities in the Northern Corridor.
Yeah, Chair, can I just come in? Local press is way down the list of our priorities now. People don't communicate in that fashion anymore. It's a digital medium by far and away, through the council's website, through Twitter, through Facebook, through Snapchat, whatever. But that's the vast majority where people get their information now, and that's the way the council delivers its messages most.
Anne-Marie, we're still not getting you. They need to speak to the digital people in North Lanarkshire about getting better connectivity for Cardown, for you, Anne-Marie, as well. Right, is there any other points on that issue? The point has been made to Andrew in terms of the issues.
John, I have had my hand up for a while there. Sorry, I don't know if you
Sorry, Claire, your hand's been up most of the night, so that's
I did put it down, so I put it back up again.
So on you go, Claire.
What it was is obviously our group do a lot of litter picking around the Northern Corridor, and some of the real hot spots where the amount of litter is actually dangerous to children's safety are ones where bins have been removed. So I'd just like it on the record that it is actually going to affect children's safety. Particularly, and I don't know if anybody from Moodysburn wants to come in here, Play Park at Kelvin Drive, we litter pick that every week, and I know the council have litter pickers out there as well. The amount of litter there is huge. The bin is full in one day. The bin that's there is awful at the moment. But the replacement bin is going to be a considerable distance away from that play park. So while this process where bins may be moved is carried out, in the interim, we're left with play parks strewn with litter, and it is a safety issue.
Could I suggest, Andrew, that if people have got concerns about particular placement of bins and issues regarding the amount of litter, and also, as I mentioned earlier, poo bags that are being left behind, if people want to contact you directly?
No, John, that's not the purpose of the community champions, to deal with individual complaints like that. There's a mechanism in there where you complain to the service. It's there, it exists. So it's our land services team. They're responsible for uplifting and putting in the new litter bins, uplifting litter, doing litter picks, everything else. They're also there to support local communities. I'm hopefully clear you've received that support, obviously, for all the good work that's getting done there. But these individual service complaints, there's a mechanism in there. If you go on the website, it's there. If you contact the actual individual service, that mechanism exists already.
Could you arrange for Christine to get the contact details, the email contact details for that service? Because sometimes the council's website isn't the best to negotiate. So if you could pass on the details of that to Christine, and if Christine could forward that to the Northern Corridor Community Forum and the other community reps that are here tonight, so we can get people to deal with that directly with the land services. Okay. Anything else on that issue? If not, I'm going to move on. I'm trying to finish it.
Just very quickly, Chair. Just very quickly, Chair. The only thing I would like to see is for the amount of time that it takes to put out the information on the social media, if they had simply sent out an email to the community board members for us to have a look at, you know, for our own individual groups, for our own individual areas, you know, for us to feedback before all of this was rolled out, you know, it would have saved a lot of heartache. So, you know, that's communication is all that I'm asking for. It doesn't take a long time to send out an email to a group list.
Okay. On that final point, and move on to the next. Sorry,
can I just, yes, all I'm just going to reiterate is that communication, maybe to wrap this meeting up. Please, can we have the notes, minutes, or whatever we want to call them for these meetings published much earlier, together with the action points, to give people like myself the opportunity to go back to my community, to discuss them and come back with some reasoned responses. The notes and documents for this meeting came out so late that the meeting of the Auchinlock Community Council isn't actually due until, you know, the week after next. So I've not had a chance to discuss with my community. And this happens for every one of these board meetings. These board meetings take place once a quarter. Surely we could have the notes, the slides, the whatever, say in 4 weeks' time. I don't see why we can't do that.
Okay, I think that's quite well made, Brandon, and I'm sure Matt and his colleagues will take that on board in terms of how we progress it.
Chair, very briefly, we'll make every effort to get the minutes of the meeting out as soon as we can. It's not just the council that does the minutes, it's partners in NHS Lanarkshire and Voluntary Action North Lanarkshire who also do that. So we're relying on the capacity of a number of organisations to try and pull that together. We are doing the best we can to get information out. In terms of the minute, we'll try and get that out within the next 4 weeks.
Right, thank you, Matt. Next thing I've got on the agenda is the Community Empowerment Committee. That was Alice, I believe, dealing with that point.
Thanks, Chair. These are 2 items from Stepson District Community Council. And it's interesting to note that the meeting has already identified and discussed these points prior to me raising them tonight. I'd like to preface what I'm going to say by referencing the plan for North Lanarkshire, and the priority is to enhance participation, capacity and empowerment across our communities, and ambition statement 19, improve engagement with communities and develop their capacity to help themselves. And I'd also like to reference the document that was mentioned previously, the North Lanarkshire Council report to the Community Empowerment Committee, Community Boards Cycle 4. The first issue that Stepson District Community Council would like to raise is in relation to the current reporting model that is used, the procedures and the processes that is used for the community board to report to the Community Empowerment Committee. Now, the governance structure requires that the board report to the committee. The reports are written and delivered by council officers. Now, the nature of this means that these are done without any input or consultation with other board members, particularly the chair of the community board. And I'm suggesting that there's problems regarding this model, and there's problems in the development of community boards when faced with this model. The board, namely the chair, does not have a direct channel of communication. It has no reach with the Community Empowerment Committee. There is no opportunity to build or develop effective and productive relationships. And I would argue that this approach is not democratic. And that for legislation that's been introduced specifically to empower communities, the writing and delivery of reports by council officers only with no consultation or no input from members of the community board on the content of the report, actually disempowers communities. The power to report to the committee continues to be held by council employees. Now, it could be argued, and it was touched on earlier, that the resulting reporting is a North Lanarkshire Council reflection of the proceedings of the board meetings, which may not include the challenges and issues that the board faces from a community's perspective and would wish the committee to know about. And raising this issue brings us back to the terms of reference that were mentioned previously, and they need to review these to ensure consideration of all processes and procedures for the board. There is no model of reporting within the terms of reference. So the terms of reference need review, and these need to be developed with and agreed upon by board members. So as we know, the council officers provide a report as part of their organisational management process. This is required, and this is no reflection on individual officers who are doing their job and carrying out the reporting procedures required by them. But this is a management report, and it's between the council, employees, and the Community Empowerment Committee. I'm proposing tonight from Steps and District Community Council that as part of the ongoing development of community boards, consideration should be given and discussion should be initiated regarding a report delivered by the chair of the community board directly to the Community Empowerment Committee, and that this should be noted, actioned, and progressed. And the second point from Steps and District Community Council, this issue is in regards to the public sector equality duty and Fairer Scotland duty. Now, given that the content of these assessments will impact citizens in the community, the documents should be made available for the community to see and understand how the council has arrived at decision and the issues, or maybe no issues, have been identified, and that due diligence has been paid to ensure thorough consultation, which has been remarked on countless occasions this evening, with the community to consider and act upon potential or real impact and the process by which these assessments were undertaken. Now, it does say in several of these reports, it will say there was an assessment carried out. It's not publicised in the report. So I'm proposing that these assessments are published with North Lanarkshire Council reports, that this request should be noted, it should be actioned, and it should be progressed. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions on what I've said.
Are there any questions of what Alice has said?
John, could I just give a wee update about the equalities bit
Christine,
that Alice had mentioned? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I sought some clarification for you, Alice, based on the equalities kind of point that you raised. What I found was that consideration has previously been given to whether these should be attached to committee reports. But it was agreed that all equality impacts assessments are available on the council's website, and I've got a link for that which I can circulate to you. They're all retained in one particular place within that, because the council reports would be too long and wordy if everything was included with every report. So the decision was made that it would be kept centrally, and as I said, I can get that sent out to you.
Okay. Are there any other?
The request for this relates to a particular instance when the Community Council requested an equalities impact assessment. And this information, Christine, isn't widely known. And I don't know if I'm content or satisfied with that answer, but I'd be prepared to look at that and maybe offer suggestions on it. But there's no transparency over these assessments. These assessments impact on protected groups, they impact on communities, and communities should be aware of the impact or no impact and what assessment has been carried out in regards to that. If there are changes in provision or delivery of services in a community, the community should know the impact of these on that community and with whom consultation has taken place. So if you could do that, Christine, I'd be very grateful, and I'll give you my critique of that.
Okay, and no doubt Christine will pass that on to the officers directly involved in drawing up these assessments, Alice.
Chair, can I come in briefly? Just another point regarding the Chair's report to the Community Empowerment Committee. We'll pass those comments on to Democratic Legal Services, and we'll get any comment, we'll feed that back.
Okay,
thanks
thank you
very much, Matt.
Is there any other comments on the issues raised by Alice? If there are no other comments, the next thing was the NCCB minutes and action points. I think, Alice, if you're agreeable, I think Brandon raised the points earlier about getting the minutes and the action points out, hopefully 4 weeks after the meeting, that will address some of the issues that you're raising on that, and under that item. Is that agreed? I'm waiting for a response from Alice. Alice has disappeared.
Thanks, John. Yes, thank you. I'm in agreement with that.
Right, okay, that's fine. Next thing is the input from community planning partners, and we have to say David Shaw, thanks. Sorry, David Shaw was supposed to do a housing presentation, but that's been dropped off the agenda, or we would be here till midnight. But I'd like to thank David Rennie for his written, I think it was yourself, David, that submitted the written report prior to the meeting. I'd like to congratulate you for doing that, and that's the way we would like to see reports being issued to the community board prior to the meeting, so we get a chance to read over it. Is there anything you would want to specifically highlight from the paperwork you sent out, David?
Nothing at all, Chair. No, nothing.
Right.
Everything's in that report.
Is there any questions to David about the report that was received? If there are no questions, I will move swiftly on to any other competent business. I'm assuming Christine, Matt, there's no other.
Chair, we've got Neil McLeod here from the police.
Sorry, Neil, do you want to say anything tonight?
Yeah, I did have an update prepared. However, we've obviously gone well over our time, so I'll just keep it very brief in terms of a brief summary. Housebreakings, we've had 10 housebreakings in our area over the last period. 3 of these have been detected. Areas, districts that have been affected by that are Moodiesburn, Steps, Cardowan and Christon. The main theme of these housebreakings appears to be the theft of vehicles, people accessing houses to obtain keys and steal the vehicles. One very recent arrest in relation to that was a male arrested this morning, a 27-year-old male. He was arrested having been responsible for 2 very recent thefts of vehicles. Of note, this same male was arrested on Saturday of last weekend for the theft of 4 bicycles in the Mount Ellen and Gartcosh area. He appeared in court on Monday and unfortunately was released on bail, and it didn't take him long to reoffend, so that'll be handed back in court tomorrow. In terms of serious violence, pleased to say there's only really 2 to report on. One robbery which happened in Muirhead, where a 31-year-old male was arrested and remanded in custody for that, and 1 serious assault in Glenboy.
Sorry, Neil. Neil's just went offline there, unfortunately. So if you have any questions for Neil, I think you need to try and contact him direct, because he looks as though he's dropped off. And Neil, are you back with us? Still not there. As I said, if there's any direct questions to Neil, could I suggest that you get in touch with him directly, because it looks as though his internet's going down, connection's going down. So is there any other issues? Any other comment? Alice?
Thanks, Chair. Very quickly, it would be helpful if we could receive some information about the £5 million investment that's being agreed with councils from the Scottish Government. And this is about play parks across Scotland. They're to be modernised and restored through £5 million of funding. Each local authority will receive a share of funding to improve the standard of existing play parks, enhancing play opportunities for children and young people. And the funding is the first round of the Scottish Government's planned investment for play park renovation. So it would be helpful if once the council has information on that it could come to us, please.
Give an update in terms of what the council intend to do when they apply for the funding. That can be taken on board.
Right, Chair. Yeah, that'll be something that we'll be taking forward, and we'll be able to report on that.
Right. Isabel, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's more for advice. Maybe Andrew or one of the other officers could help us. Here in Gartcosh, we've got a play park. It's under the registered scheme. It's been registered and cared for by North Lanarkshire Council for 60 years. It was in partnership with the Steelworks. The Steelwork donated the land. The council cut the grass, put the play equipment in and maintained it. It's a memorial park. It is next to our memorial for veterans. It has been abandoned under the schedule. We got the registration number. We've confirmed that it's been a registration park. And John Ashcroft has said it will not be cut, but they'll inspect the play equipment annually. But the kids can't get to the play park because of the state of the grass and the state of the park. And I'd like to know, I've got Greg Lennon here, if you're here. Greg, I'd like to know what's going to be done about it. And I'd like to know who to put an official complaint to, based on the fact we've provided the evidence that North Lanarkshire has looked after this park and has installed the play equipment in it and have maintained the park for 60 years and have got partnership with another organisation. And is it North Lanarkshire's way of doing business that when they've got a partnership with another organisation, without even telling the community or telling Tata Steel that they're abandoning the area and they're no longer going to maintain it, and don't tell anybody, and that's us went the whole summer and these kids can't get access to the park.
Don't know, Councillor Lennon, are you on line? No, doesn't seem to be there. Isabel.
So who best to speak to? Because John Ashcroft's.
Well,
no point.
As I said in the past, Isabel, you've got 3 councillors for Ward 6, and I suggest that you contact all 3 elected members because they all have a duty to respond to the community. You know who your 3 elected members are, and I suggest you get in touch with the 3 elected members and try and push them to get John Ashcroft to take action on the park.
Could I ask who John Ashcroft's line manager is, if anybody knows?
Here, it's Nicole Patterson's the head of service, but the council's got its complaints mechanism as well. Isabel, if you want to go through that.
I think really that's the answer, Andrew. I think the more we put things into the complaints procedure, the better. Because just to be told, I mean, I think everybody would agree that that is an unacceptable response. You know, there's 5 play parks listed in Glenboig, and there's 2 in Gartcosh. One sits within the council estate, and the other was previously within the houses that were built for the steelwork. And when you've got a partnership going there for 60 years, that's how long the land's been transferred, And as each steel organisation has changed, they've transferred the land. And you know, it's been an agreement, and we've actually got the records to substantiate that North Lancashire Council go in and actually inspect the equipment, and it was in the maintenance schedule, and then they just turn around because they don't own the land. And what they've done is they've taken it off.
Yeah, I think your point's been well made. I think Andrew's given you a response in terms of how to take it forward. And I suggest, because it is now 9:15, so if I've allowed the meeting to run on to allow the community to make their points. Alice, you've got your hand up. Are you wanting back in? I think Alice has disappeared as well. If there's no other competent business, can I thank you all for your perseverance with the meeting tonight, the way you have conducted yourself. Can I say that this will be my last community board meeting? Tonight I stepped down as the chair and decided not to seek re-election to the Glenboy Development Trust board because the AGM was being held tonight as well. So I will wish you all the best for the future. Hopefully the issues of the democratic engagement by communities through this process will be enhanced as it goes forward. And I wish you all the best of luck. It's been a pleasure chairing 2 of the community board meetings and being involved in the Northern Corridor Community Forum. But can I say my farewells to everybody and look forward to seeing you in other guises in the future. So thank you all for your attendance. Good night. And I would normally say safe journey home, but given that you are all sitting in your own homes, apart from the fire officer, can I say take care and look after yourselves, and good night. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.